Wednesday glow, getting tuned in, tapped in, turned on by life. And today, I bet you none of you realize it's National Ginger Snap Day. Yeah, snap. Make a decision quickly. Exactly the origin of the word ginger snap from the Germans. And there's a big community out there that during the pandemic had to make ginger snap decisions, and that was our educators. And I am so privileged to have my sister today as an educator. Tell us how this whole thing has come down. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her before she answers some questions, and you guys are just going to wow, these teachers have been through a lot. So my sister has been teaching and been in the educational community since the early 1980s, yes. Right? And I'm going to see who's on, Isabel. Let me just see this real quick. Hi, everybody out there. Because if you have any questions, I'll definitely want you to put them in the chat here for us. So let me pull this up. And in the meantime, while I'm doing that, so she's been a teacher since the 80s and high school in Southern California. She moved into different levels of education, didn't just stay in the high school, elementary, middle school, special ed was a big background for you, correct? And she's also done a tremendous amount of work, which I really admire, one-on-one. So, Isabel,
yes,
say hello to our friends here on Facebook land. Yeah,
we're
just and she literally, amongst so many other people here in the education world, had to make a ginger snap moment decision on, wow, we have to not go to school anymore, the building, so to speak, right? So why don't you first tell us how you got into education, because I'm a former teacher too. What inspired you?
I was at school in college, and it actually was an accident. Somebody called because the local high school needed a last-minute teacher 2 weeks before school started. I hadn't quite finished my classes yet, and I thought, what? I'll go interview. And I walked out of the interview with a history book and art supplies, because I was going to be teaching history and art at a little private high school up in Santa Barbara. So from that point on,
and you just fell in love with it, right?
Yeah, it was definitely hard, but it was where I got started.
So during this pandemic, what was the first snap decision that most teachers in your age group, arena, the area that you teach, had to make and transition?
They had probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks, to prepare how to do everything online. So from teachers that were used to doing everything in the classroom one-on-one, suddenly they had to figure out, how am I going to translate my lessons to a Zoom meeting with their students, as well as trying to understand the logistics of seeing 25 students at one time and keeping them focused on lessons in a totally different way.
And some of these teachers probably didn't even know how to use Zoom. Is that correct? Or how did that
They
happen?
had not even heard about it. I think they had a one-day training, and that was it. And they learned on the job. They learned how to use this.
So learning this was extra hours on top of just what they normally had done, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't like, oh, we're going to give you extra bucks for this.
Oh, no. It was their typical salary.
Okay.
So.
And did you notice, was the community of teachers that you knew, did most of them go, okay, I can do this? I mean, what was kind of some of the reactions that you experienced out there?
What I witnessed mostly was a little bit of panic, a little bit of frustration over suddenly changing so drastically to a new type of teaching. And I would say it was a stressful situation for most of the teachers that I know. It was very different.
Now, what was your job during that time, and how did you transition? Like,
So I had transitioned from being in the classroom to doing more one-on-one teaching. So I worked with special needs students first, and then I got more into tutoring one-on-one, mostly for the middle school and high school level. But I also worked into administration and assisting the principal. So when the pandemic hit, I was actually working in the office helping the principal figure out all the logistics as well, and helping teachers understand what their requirements were.
So right now we've got Kendra who's watching, and Edgar, and Mario. Now Mario, Edgar, and Kendra all have, experience either within their own family, their own kids, a little bit of that. Why don't you speak a little bit on, did you have parents calling or making questions or panicking? What was it from the parent side?
Yes. Well, first of all, there was a concern for health. There were some parents that immediately, as news started breaking that the silent enemy was out there, they actually pulled out students from the schools. There was probably a handful, and that got the ball rolling. The next concern is, how am I going to teach my kid at home when I'm working? And another concern was technology and having access. So I have one computer and I have 2 children. How am I going to get them to use the technology? So we had to address how to give the technology out, how to calm parents down a little bit, what we were going to do, because we were learning everything as well as they, at the same time that they were learning.
How did you guys keep yourself, and by you guys I mean because you're on, more of a management administrative during all this time, how did you keep yourself calm? Like, did you have a little power focus group that you guys would kind of come together? Or
yes, we did meet as a team. At first, the principal, myself, the office staff, and said, how can we help our teachers adjust? How can we keep ourselves calm? We had to get educated and figure out what was really going on
So
out there.
Kendra mentioned something, lots of moving parts.
Yes.
And did you find that the community of what are we going to do really molded everyone, or did it start to kind of tear people apart? Well, my opinion's this and my opinion's this.
I believe that teachers started to unionize a little bit, and they worked as teams. So for instance, in my school, it's an elementary school.
Okay.
The first grade team would get together and collaborate and say, how can we start to teach lessons in a way that's not all on me? So can you design a math lesson, and I'll design a writing lesson, and put it on tape so that they didn't have to constantly be on Zoom.
Now, you kind of mentioned something that's interesting here. One teacher doing math. Okay, do you think that it's possible going into the future, because this is going to be around for a while, that one teacher could massively teach a lot of third graders?
When you say massive, if you're talking like hundreds of kids,
Yeah.
I think that's very difficult. The primary tech thing that they're using now is Zoom. And so, as you know, there's frames of students, and you're trying to keep them focused on you. For elementary level, I think it's very difficult to go with large groups. At the higher level, like high school, possibly you could do that, but I would not recommend it for younger
elementary.
levels. No.
Do you think the children, elementary-wise, really need that one-on-one interaction, not only with their teacher, but with their fellow,
Oh
friends?
yeah, there's no substitute for one-on-one. It's just the eye contact that you can have directly, the human touch that they need from their teachers. They're babies still, and so they need that type of interaction. If you were to observe a session with the teacher teaching students while on Zoom,
Okay.
you will see students standing up and walking around a room. It's really hard to keep them focused. So a lot of teachers said that at the younger level, they tried to narrow their lessons down to, let's say, less than 5 minutes.
Interesting.
And then moving on to something else. because the focus is so difficult. The other issue with younger students is that parents typically have to be with them.
Which adds another.
Yeah, that adds another. So the parent that's working is constantly reminding the student to sit down or to listen to the teacher or to write something or to, whatever it might be, the instruction at that moment. The parent is needing to help the younger students.
So do you see, obviously, fall's almost around the corner and everybody's coming up with different plans. What have you seen is probably going to be the picture for the fall on the elementary level?
Well, it's interesting because right now I believe a lot of the local superintendents are meeting. So there is collaboration on that level, but everybody still is kind of doing their own thing.
Okay.
So I am on a steering committee for my district, and as of almost July 1st, our district has no idea right now what they're going to do. They're talking about, one of three options: going back to school, just normal as ever. Second option would be distance learning continued as we started in March, or doing what they call a hybrid. And the hybrid has so many unknowns. So I think because our numbers are going up right now, we're probably going to continue with distance learning in a few months. I really believe we're going towards that direction.
Yeah, California's had a really big surge for those of you that are watching, and that is a tremendous concern, how's this going to affect my family and so forth. So I'd like to know a little bit about what subjects do you find are probably the toughest ones to really try to capture and learn and embrace in a Zoom setting? I mean, I can understand, possibly math, possibly another, but what would, like chemistry or science? Or
when you mention math, surprisingly, math is probably one of the easier subjects to teach on Zoom.
Okay.
Teachers are pretty creative about using their homemade settings and using boards or whatever they have to demonstrate how to do a type of math problem.
Or something.
Okay, but really it is going to be more the hands-on subjects, the chemistry, the sciences, where you have usually a lab. And so what you're asking now is for students to create their own home labs, which means the parent, of course, has to get involved and find supplies either at the home or, go to the store and find things that they can use for an experiment, which, on one hand could probably be a positive thing. They're working with their parents and they're learning how to do these things, being creative with their resources. But on the other hand, really understanding the concept, maybe it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So
I think I've got a question here. Let me look and see if I've got some questions. Oh, we've got Lisa, who's also a teacher. And Lisa is one that is a speech therapist.
Oh,
so
yeah.
have you had any experiences with the teachers that have specialties and how they've been having to deal with that?
I think the specialists, the speech therapists, anybody working with special education, they are working very hard. They're finding it, at least from my understanding, that they've got to work longer hours. It's a little bit more planning to work with these types of children. So it's already difficult as it is on a one-on-one situation, but I really feel for the specialists right now in the schools.
Yeah.
So
let's kind of wrap it up with two things. Parents, overall. I know when we were raising our kids, it's like if you had 2 or 3 different kids on different schedules, one in junior high, one in grade school, one wherever, you just did what you had to do. But we didn't have as many 2 working parents. We could kind of be flexible. And then as time went on, we saw the 2 working parents progress and progress and progress. So do you see that as a big impediment and something that's going to prevent learning for children?
I don't see it that way. I see that because the world is changing so quickly, parents are learning how to adapt. Now, parents are very honest and they admit that they can't do the teaching, that they just don't feel like they don't understand the curriculum well enough, or they don't understand the technology, but they're being creative. An example of that would be I also do tutoring. I think I have been the busiest I've ever been with home tutoring now. I have actually gone to the homes of high schoolers with masks on, sitting 5 feet apart from them, helping them with subjects so that they can make sure they pass everything that they need for their transcript. So I think parents are being very creative. They're hiring people, they're getting help, and one with family members to come in and help. Older brothers and sisters are helping with the younger ones. So I don't think parents are an impediment. They just have to be creative.
I love what she said, adapt and adjust. I think that this is crucial in any area right now during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
People, instead of going immediately to responsive react, adapt and adjust. Okay, let's take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how we can do this. So I hear positivity. I hear what excites you about the future of this change? Is there an excitement of wow.
I do think this is going to bring on some changes in education that we don't even know about. An example of that would be something like a lot of time administrators are spending with special education meetings that are required by law. I think they're going to start doing those all by Zoom, and rather than have a whole group of people come into the office, they can do this now in a different way. Maybe they'll save time. I don't know if it's a time saver, but it's a different way of doing things. So it might be that we change the school day and we do things remotely part of the day and kids come to school part of the day. But I do think that from now on, it's not going to go back
to what it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that we are having to change in a snap, as you say.
In a snap.
It's a new world in education.
So I am so honored to have someone that has a perspective of adapt and adjust, being positive, because this is our future. And I know that there's a lot of men and women in her shoes that have taken on this role. Kudos to you guys.
Yes.
So go out, send them a love note, give them a hi, give them the Wednesday glow.
Yeah.
Oh. Ginger snap moment,
yeah.
And we're gonna take the cookie, that's the Italian, and say goodbye. Ginger snap.